Okay, it's 7 o'clock.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You guys all ready?
Yeah, we're ready. Sorry.
Ready? You ready? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the July 9th, 2024 Murraysville Planning Commission meeting. Will you please all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Eddie, please call the roll.
Mr. Midal?
Here.
Mr. Kearns?
Here.
Mr. Patrick?
Here.
Mr. Olszewski?
Here.
Mr. Lemke?
Here.
Mrs. Hoy?
Here.
Mr. Levecki? Mrs. Ling?
We have minutes from May 14th. Anyone have any comments or corrections to the minutes?
No comments, Bob.
No? I have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Is everybody's air conditioner broke? Is that why you're all here? Okay, we have two public. We're going to change the order of them, and we're going to do I think most of the people here are probably for the Summer Hill project, so we'll do that first and let you guys go off to do better things. The way we conduct the public hearing, we'll hear from the applicant first, give us a brief presentation of what he proposes to do. We'll then follow up with comments from the floor. This is not a debate tonight. We're interested in your comments, and these will not necessarily be giving you answers this evening, but we do want to hear your comments. And when you do speak, please give your name and address for the court stenographer who is taking this all down. Okay, so we're going to have a public hearing on the Summerhill Phase 2, which this is application number CU 324, a conditional use application for steep slopes and poor soils. This is on a almost 23 acre parcel. This is on Goldie Lane, tax parcels 4906000999. I know that many of you people are interested in and don't want to prevent you from making any comments on it, but the purpose of this hearing tonight is because it's a conditional use and under Murraysville code, because the amount of earthwork that's involved here requires a public hearing. So, having said that, Mr. Hall, can we put any of this up on the board? On the screen, Jim?
Yeah, I'm working on it there, Mr. President.
Could you give your name for the record, sir?
Yes, my name is Jeff Parabeck. I'm with Ascent Consulting and Engineering. We're the engineers for Summerhill developers.
You may fare better by picking that up or holding it in your hand.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
What drawing do you want up?
The overall site plan.
How about the grading plan?
Grading plan will work, yes. Okay, this is Summerhill Phase 2. What we're proposing to do is construct 64 units on approximately 23 acres at the back of Goldie Lane, which was part of the Summerhill Phase 1 portion of the project. Used to be a combination of basically townhouses, duplexes to create the total number of units. The amount of earthwork that we're doing is approximately 70,000 cubic yards. It's pretty close to a balanced site. And in going through, we've gone through Westmoreland Conservation that we have worked through with the Conservation District.
Go ahead.
And some initial comments we worked through with the Conservation District for their technical review. A lot of that has been taken care of. The only thing that was outstanding was infiltration testing for the stormwater management, which we've done. And, depending on final resolution of comments from you all and from your reviewing engineer, some of that may change a little bit, which could impact and cause a resubmission to the Conservation District. In going over the briefing, there were essentially a couple sets of comments. The one on page for 220-36 areas in excess of 40%. Based upon the exhibit which we provided, it had slopes in excess of 25%. Couldn't determine where. Really simple revision to that exhibit that we can submit even as early as tomorrow to Jim for further review. Also, there was a geotechnical engineering report submitted with the initial land development plan. We had received comments from KU Resources on that geotechnical report. In conversation with KU between then and now, we had worked through a lot of those comments. They had recommended some additional test pits on the site to confirm some additional laboratory testing. As you can see under the 220-37D, we submitted a revised geotechnical report to KU Resources that's dated June the 14th. We have not seen any comments from that yet for their review. The comments that are here from the geotech are from the original report. So based on our conversations between then and now with KU, we had tried to address those with the additional laboratory testing and test pitting that was done on the site. Any comments that they would come back with, we would obviously take care of to their satisfaction to make sure that the site's stable. Likewise, any comments that would come through reviews from tonight or further review as we go forward, we'll make a commitment to address those to the best that we can. That's my brief summary.
Brief summary. Okay, thank you. Is there any comments or questions from the Planning Commission at this time?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I would comment that the response, the June 14th response was not sent to staff, so we were unaware that KU was in possession of it. That's why the comments have not been added to the briefing.
June 14th was the date of that?
The date of the revised report was June the 14th. That's correct.
Okay. When you, sir, as you know, this is going to be kind of a long process, so.
Yes, sir.
Rather than just submitting stuff to the various consultants, please submit them to Mr. Morrison so that he has them and can keep track of them.
Understood. We'll do that for future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to hear from public comments. To speak. Mr. Lemke, would you do the honors of anyone that...
Anybody that's going to testify, please stand and raise your right arm. Speak, testify, however you want to say it. Please stand and raise your right. I swear, repeat after me. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. I should have said, say I do if you agree to that. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, the first one that is signed up is Tony Brockway. Tony. You could stand on the podium.
Tony Brockway, 3805 Goldie Lane, Murraysville. Good evening, Planning Commission and others who are here. I'd like to talk about a few concerns with the Summerhill Phase 2 development. I realize that this public hearing is for excavation of slopes and moving ground. But when, as a community, when we took a look at it, first of all, right now, Summerhill is 50 beautiful homes that are 4-carriage homes in it, and then some townhomes in a beautiful park-like setting with good taxpayers for 20-plus years in this community. And we always realized that this community below, that Kevin was going to develop it. It's his right, he owns it. But once all of this came to fruition, when we took a deeper dive into the weeds, we realized that there are some real issues concerning our community, and we believe should be addressed even before one shovel of earth gets done because of how concerning it is to us. So anyway, before I get started, I did send an email. I know a few people have sent emails. I sent an email with about 15 homeowners on it. If you didn't get it, I do have copies. Does anybody need a copy?
All of the emails and correspondence that staff has received has been put in a folder in the Dropbox.
What's that folder called, Jim? I'm looking for it.
Go to planning.
This one? This one?
No, right there.
This one?
No.
Would you like a copy in front of you?
Did you drag
These
it
are
over?
old.
Did you drag it
The
over?
other
Patty?
planning,
Yeah,
Yeah.
planning one.
They're planning one.
2024.
Yeah, I don't see it.
It's not in here.
I'll take a copy.
7.
Let me see if I can get it over.
We'll make sure that they're in there, Tony.
Yeah.
I read this.
Anyway, there are 4, at least we sort of put together 4 areas of concern, but 2 of which, is this on? I feel like I'm, thank you. But there are 2 areas that we think are of real concern before the development happens. The first is the roadway easement agreement, and the other is regulatory compliance. The roadway easement agreement is, once again, I assume you have a copy of the agreement that was signed. And I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on TV. I know that this was allowed to happen, the easement agreement, but it doesn't take an attorney to read it, to gray and not executed in good faith. And I say that because the agreement was signed by the board at the time, the HOA at the time, was made up of 5 people, 2 of which were homeowners, 2 of which are still homeowners, 1 of which is here today, and then 3, the majority, were the owner, his wife, and Gary Hall. And if you look at the agreement, their rights. They have every right whatsoever to do anything. They can go above it, below it, around it, do whatever they want to access anything they need for utilities or whatever. What it doesn't say, and what I don't know if any of you have seen, that road is the only road in and out for even some of the people in Summerhill currently. It's no bigger than probably a double-sided driveway. And when you're digging that up, my driveway is right on that road. There's another person whose home is right on there. And then there are people below that. If there is large equipment sitting on that road and or they dig it up, it says nothing about how they're going to secure my safety. I mean, if it's dug up and they don't fix it right away, and it says in there they don't have to fix it right away, I have nowhere to park. They have very few parking beyond that. You know, I'm not a spring chicken. I come home late at night. This could happen during the winter hours, and I need some assurances, and I know they don't have to, but we're asking that they realize that our community needs some safeguards and some assurances in that document. The other thing, we know that large equipment does park on there because there are 4 townhouses already developed by Phase 2 of Summerhill, and several times there were large trucks there waiting to do their part in doing the construction. And several times I had to go out and asked them to move. And one time I physically couldn't get out of my driveway because they were so big and I couldn't back out. And the response I got by one of the people who was in the truck was, well, we're not going to be here very long. It's only for a short period of time. And then overflow parking was also taken up. So it's a very gray area. It's a very gray contract when it comes to the needs and the concerns and the issues of the current community there. Also, when you're talking about grayness, you know, our HOA guidelines currently, which they were a part of at one point for 20 plus years, says nobody can park on that road. And they can't park in there just because of the reason I cited. It's a very small road that causes problems. And there is parking that goes on if those big equipment are going to be there. I think the biggest concern we have with the agreement is from a financial perspective. You know, when you look at it, the cost, the wear and tear of that road, yes, they say they're going to fix the road after they dig it up and get their utilities, and then, you know, once they're gone and Ryan, it'll be a percentage, they'll only pay a percentage of, you know, whatever needs to happen to that road. And what that is going to do is put a burden on the community that's currently there, because their small percentage will never be, until the very end, as big as our large community. So we are going to have the burden of fixing that road. And it doesn't say who says when to do it, when is it going to happen, how often is it going to happen. And when you look at a great analogy to this, well, first of all, when they built the 4 townhouses below, they did, after 2 or 3 years, my understanding is they looked at the road, they said, oh, it looks fine, you know, we don't owe you anything. Well, in the agreement, they don't owe anything. And snow removal is being done on there. Our community puts into our reserve money for road maintenance and snow removal. If this goes on for 4 or 5 years, whatever it's going to take, there is wear and tear and a burden being put on 50 people that pay taxes currently. And I'll give you a great analogy. The gentleman who gave it to me is a homeowner. He's not here tonight. But let's say you have a car, and you give that car to somebody and you let them use it for 4 to 5 years, and they run it everywhere and they're doing whatever. They bring it back and they say, it's running, we don't owe you anything. That may be true, but there is maintenance and wear and tear, and there is a burden. Our ask for this whole roadway agreement, and it is, by the way, the concern in these 2 communities. So when you're looking at, you know, some of us, we don't like the traffic issues, the safety issues, we'd like it to look like it used to look, or real concern is that one road that goes between the communities, out the road, there's no other road that we are going to have the burden of the cost to. So our ask, if we can ask, which I know is not really something you can, it's a legal document, but we would ask that they renegotiate it, they look at it, they, you know, add things, they take away some grayness, and in good faith sign an agreement that at least makes our community comfortable with what's going to happen down there. It is a real concern, and I truly believe that if this goes forward and nothing is done, all the calls, all the problems are going to be on that roadway because of that agreement. So that's just on the roadway. My second real quick ask is on regulatory compliance. Environmental agencies place as a result of the new development, such as enhancements to the water catch basins, should be the sole responsibility of the developer. We believe full compliance, that they should have full compliance without imposing additional burdens on our community. 2 other areas that you'll see that I put forth, and I know it's not part of the digging of the stuff, but it is traffic and safety, and also a delineation, a true delineation of the communities. And just as an FYI, I know this is silly, but As I said that at one point, even some people in my own community thought, wow, she must be this Karen who doesn't want, people to come around and have other people in your community. And that's not it at all. I have a lot of friends. This is a safety and a financial issue. And I'll tell you why. Currently, it looks like a park, and people from outside of our community come in, walk their dogs, walk their children, do whatever. If you have 61 units, double that 120 people and children and whoever goes in there, that's a massive amount of people who will consider walking up the road, going into the rest of the community, and causing some havoc. And if you don't think it can cause havoc, I don't know if any ever talked to anybody who lives in Heritage Estates. I have a sister 3 miles down the road, Heritage Estates. She has an HOA. They have their own private road. And then there's a road down below where there's a lot of homes, and then there's even another carriage home community further out. The difference is they have a second road out of there. But even with that, they have had problems with people stealing things out of cars. They've had problems with people in the middle of the road talking on their phones with children, with animals, not getting out of the way. And it's an elderly community. It can cause problems. But worse than that, last year, kids from down below came through big rocks into their pool just for fun and destroyed the liner. And they had to pay for the liner. So I'm not trying to be a Karen. I'm hoping that we can see, and it's going to be very difficult, a delineation of these properties. So with that, if you have any questions of me, I'm here, and if not, I'll turn it over to some other people who want to speak.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Michelle, and I cannot read your last name.
I don't need to speak now. I was only signing in case my seller didn't show up.
Okay, thank you. Estelle McGrath.
Hello. Estelle McGrath, 1020 Summer Ridge Court. I brought my whole office. So I appreciate you listening to me tonight. I was here at one of the prior meetings. I've been following this closely. We live at Summer Ridge Court. The back of prospective purposes, the back of my home will be facing the proposed cul-de-sac on Goldie Lane. You can see on the April 2024 plans that was submitted by the developer, my name along with my husband's name on the plans and where our house is. I'm here tonight because we oppose the granting of the conditional use. But before I go any further, I understand that Mr. Lemke has had relationships with the developer. He's represented the developer before, and I would like voting on any issues as it results in this community or these votes.
Yes, I am recusing myself from these discussions.
Great. Appreciate that, Mr. Lemke.
You're welcome.
We have a pool in our backyard, and most of our property is enclosed by a fence. The proposed plan appears to show a very large slope that is very close to our fence. And I have heard different interpretations about how many feet that slope will be behind our house. I've heard some people say it's 16 feet. I've heard some people have read it and said it's 30 feet. I'm wondering tonight whether there can be any clarification for us as to whether there is a 30-foot drop behind my house, behind the fence. If not, we can, I'll pose that as a question to the commission. I'm not proficient at reading plans, but the way I read it, it says 1236 to 1206, and to me that means 30 feet, but I don't know. So if it is 30 feet or 16 feet, regardless, it's a large slope, and what they plan on excavating now is large compared to what's there now. It's a very minimal slope. Literally, I walk down it every day. My husband has been cutting that grass and taking care of that lawn for the last 10 years since we've lived there. So we have seen countless news reports over the last decade of landslides. We've seen a steady increase in precipitation. There's been articles from the National Weather Services. Average rainfall is increasing from approximately 42.5 inches in between 2010 and 2019 to now 52 and 57 inches in 2018 and 2019. So we have serious concerns about landslide issues, the danger of the slope, the gravity of that slope for children and animals and people that walk in that area. So the other thing is we obviously have a concern about the amount of dirt that's being moved in that process. It's so close to our property that obviously it could impact our pool, it could impact our house. And while we are very concerned about the amount of dirt that's being moved and the grade of that slope, I think the homeowners on the development side of the cul-de-sac of Shirley Lane should be terrified, as that slope will be extreme behind their homes and could have a severe impact on their homes if there is a landslide. And I understand that there are individuals and homeowners already residing in Shirley Lane that already have been experiencing issues, and I'll let them talk about that. But issue one is the excavation. I'm sorry. Issue one is the excavation and the steep slope. So the first question is the proposed slope behind my property 30 feet? Like I said before, the map or the plan that I'm looking at says 1206 to 1236. I don't know. What is the percentage of that slope? Is that between 25 and 40%? I presume it is based upon the meeting tonight. How close will that slope start from my property line? How will they dig that without impacting our current fence, our pool, our house? Will there be blasting? Do they have a plan for the blasting? What happens if there's damages as a result of the blasting to my fence, my pool, my house? Is there a plan for that? Has Murraysville considered that? What was the, and how will they make the dig without impacting my property? And also, what was the zoning officer's initial determination? Is the slope a 100-foot horizontal distance? Is the difference in the elevation over 20 feet? Does the slope equal or exceed 25% from the top to the bottom of the break in the grade? What is the basis for the developer's reclassification? Was there an on-site slope investigation by a registered engineer with experience in geotechnical work? If you look at that GTA report that they've submitted to the Planning Commission, in the final section, I don't know what page it's on, but there's a part that says a limited observation, and he says that there's limitations, that he's had limited observations before. Page of disclaimers in that report that we're not responsible should your house fall over, or we're not responsible if the contractor's deficient or improperly does his work. Is the developer going to put a bond out? What happens if he starts building and there's damages to our property? Has that documentation demonstrated that the proposed slope would not have an adverse impact, such as slippage, accelerated erosion, damage to water quality, and increased instability or soils? Has all of that information been submitted and reviewed by the municipal engineer? Has the municipal engineer provided a written recommendation supporting or denying the request for the reclassification? And what conditional use does it fall under Murraysville zoning regulations? Is it section 22-35G1? Is it E, F, or G? Has the developer submitted a reforesting plan to restore the natural characteristics of the land? And has there been any analysis about the safety factors of these slopes? So those are some of my points on the issues with regard to the excavation and the steep slopes of the plan. But the second issue is obviously the poor soil. The same questions. Was the initial determination of the boundaries of the areas of poor soils, like what did the zoning officer determine about the poor soil? What was the information provided by the developer for the basis for the reclassification under Murraysville zoning ordinances? Did it include a survey prepared by a qualified registered engineer? And where does it fall within the conditional use under Murraysville regulations? There's so many more concerns. I mean, I understand that that's why we're here tonight, obviously, is for the slope and the poor soil, but we have a ton of questions about those particular two issues. But the first one is the green space and the walking trails that were promised by the developer originally to the Summerhill community. When we purchased the property 10 years ago, we were told that the land behind our home was a green space that would never be developed. The Summerhill, obviously, we purchased the home because of the lot. It was beautiful. Right now, we have no neighbors to our left or behind us. But we relied upon those statements that there would not be building behind our home. The Summerhill HOA was promised walking trails. Some of the neighbors have obviously been using that green space behind my house to walk, to do yoga, to walk their dogs. The statements that there would be no building behind our home seem to be supported by the marketing materials that were provided by the developer to the people that were buying those units. And I understand that the Summerhill community members have provided you with some this afternoon. Also, the original plans of January 11th of 2006 by the developer did not identify any development or roads on that part of the green space that I'm talking about, which is directly behind my property. And I have looked at painstakingly today, unfortunately, for many hours, the declaration, the First Amended Declaration, the Second Declaration, the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the Sixth Amended Declarations, and I have been unable to locate any map or plans attached to any of those declarations that show any development on any of those green spaces. I think that's interesting. I'll reserve my comment later about the declarations themselves and whether they were properly amended. The second issue I'd like to talk about, in addition to the green space and the walking trails, is the concerns of overdevelopment and then not building. We are concerned that the developer will proceed with phase 2 and will be overestimating the need or the want for 3-story townhouses. We understand that Ryan is unlikely to buy all the land at once, and that instead he'll buy pieces and parcels at a time and build accordingly. We are afraid that the 3-story townhomes will not sell and that the land behind our house may never be built upon and be an eyesore of undeveloped land. The last 2 units of the 3-story townhomes in Summerhill sat on the market for time. I did not keep my eye on them, but I understand that it was at least almost a year. I believe one of the addresses is under contingency right now, and that's 3824 Goldie Lane. The proposed homes will not be desirable from a homeowner's perspective due to the 41 grinder pumps. We lose electricity often in Murraysville, which will certainly impact the sewage issue for those proposed homeowners. I know I would never buy a home with a grinder pump. What happens if the builder decides not to build and leaves all of that land undeveloped? The other remaining issues are very specific to the Summerhill HOA community, but those are: 1, whether the developer properly amended the declaration. It has been amended 6 times, I mentioned previously. The amendments require a 2/3 vote of the community. The Fifth Amendment, interestingly, notes that it was, on the advice of council, amended without a vote due to 7 which legally, obviously, the homeowners of Summerhill community have the right to file an injunction or file a lawsuit and hire their own counsel. But the second issue is whether the developer needs consent of the homeowners to proceed with phase 2 because of the potential improper amendments to that declaration. There's specific language in the declaration that talks about how many years he has to act state without the consent of the unit owners. As I looked at the declarations, I don't play a lawyer, I am a lawyer. So as I looked at the declaration, and I do this type of law, I do HOA law frequently. I represent property managers all the time when they get sued. When I looked at the declaration, I have serious concerns about the legality of the amendments. I didn't study it. I'm not representing Summerhill in any capacity. Myself tonight and representing my husband. So I give these comments to you without any sort of, notation that I'm representing Summerhill. But the other issue is that the developer gave himself an easement, and I know Tony discussed that earlier this evening. But I think it's much bigger than what Tony explained to you earlier. I think the issue is that the developer gave himself an easement without a proper vote, as there was only developer-appointed board members on that committee that voted. 3 of them, like she mentioned, were all part of the developer-appointed members that signed, the two unsigned homeowners, I'm sorry, there were only two homeowners on the board at that time, and both of them refused to sign that document. Now, there's another issue with that. They sign the the developer signs a document and gives himself an easement, but I don't know if the developer amended the declaration to disclose that it took an easement of that road. I don't know whether the amendment advised the homeowners with the cost of repairing and maintaining the private road after it gets destroyed from the machines and vehicles that will be utilized by the developer. I don't know whether the developer-appointed board members should have recused themselves from said vote due to their financial interest in said easements, because under the law, the Uniform under the Uniform Condominium Act, the board members, the declarant board members, we call them developer declarant board members, typically don't vote on things that they have a financial interest in because they have a fiduciary duty to Summerhill community, not themselves. The other issue is whether the developer breached its fiduciary duties, obviously, to Summerhill HOA, and whether the developer properly turned over the seats on that board to the unit owners in compliance with the Uniform Condominium Act, and the impact that those amendments and easements have on that community. So those are some of the issues that I was here tonight to discuss. I will give my card to the court reporter, and I will be here at the next meeting to have further discussions with you.
Thank you.
If you need a copy of the document I'm talking about that's unsigned, I have a copy with me.
Thank you. You give it to Mr. Morrison, if you would, please.
Hi, how are you? You can give me your card, too.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is some guy named Pavlik.
Within the 7 years.
Interesting presentation. What?
Yeah.
Do you think there was a interest in that board?
Good evening, Dennis.
Good evening.
1 second.
I'm usually the biggest troublemaker in the room.
Use the microphone, please, Dennis.
Yes, so I'm down on the other end of the development.
One second, Dennis.
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Go ahead.
Pavlik. Dennis Pavlik, 229 North Duane Drive, Pittsburgh 15239. I sent an email to members of the Planning Commission just prior to the meeting, so you haven't gotten it yet, but it has all the stuff that I wish to discuss. I did not send it to the actual staff, so if you could forward it to the staff, I'd appreciate it. Or if you'd like me to forward it, I can.
Please,
Pardon?
please do.
Okay. I'll forward it to you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, basically, this plan's been going on since April of 2024, and the Planning Commission has asked a number of questions. We have raised a number of questions. I raised them in December of 2023, and I have also raised them again at the June 7th and at the meeting last month, and I'm raising them again. I have very similar questions to what the other people on the other end of Somerville have raised. Basically, there's 4 main issues. There are 2 private wells on the property that is being developed that will be affected by the excavation. And so I think it's very imperative that those wells be sealed properly.
These water wells, Dennis?
Water wells, yes. Okay, and they're open pit water wells, as previously described. And I still have my water well that I use, so I'm very concerned about how that water is going to be handled. Now, we did speak with the developer and Mr. Hall, and they sort of indicated they understood that, but I would like it to be codified in what the Planning Commission recommends for this conditional use. The other portion is that there's a drain along North Duane Drive that was indeed like a 16-inch culvert pipe that had collapsed some years ago. It's now been replaced by a 4-inch diameter pipe 6 inches below the road surface that cannot handle the water that's there right now. And again, in speaking with the developer, when we met with them in the road, they said, oh yeah, we can throw a culvert in there. The question is, I would also like that to be codified within the recommendations for this conditional use, and that it be a culvert up to the standards of what would normally be required by the municipality of Murraysville. Plus saying a culvert, you know, how big, what diameter, what materials, how it will be put in, and that plans right now call for a retention pond to be draining into that area right now. The other, the drain pipes and drainage from the houses, developer indicated that they would be put into a storm drain system. So again, we'd like to verify that that indeed would happen, and that if they do any of the work along Duane Drive, that they restore it to its satisfactory condition. Also, there's some potential discussion with tying into a gravity sewer in Plum Borough that runs partway up Duane Drive, and so that they would also restore requirements they restore and bond the road to actually be brought up to standards as Murraysville would do a municipal road. Duane Drive's a private road for halfway down the hill, and then the rest of the way it goes to Plum Borough. And should the developer use any portion of that he restore it with 100% stone backfill for said line, also noting that Westmoreland County portion is gravel, but Allegheny County portion is paved, so that if they actually have to run through that and do go with a gravity sewer, that they actually restore everything, and that those conditions be made part of your agreement with the developer before approving the conditional use. And that is the end of my comments. The stuff that I sent you previously handles that. I have a copy here in writing, and I'll forward the email that has the same data to Mr. Morrison. And also, if the developer would like a copy of the material, I'll give it to him as well. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yes, sir.
Cindy Salsa, Sasala, excuse me.
Thank you.
3812 Goldie Lane. I'm going to keep my comments very brief here. I'm just approaching you, the Planning Commission. I work for Roto-Rooter. I am an exactament writer, insurance coordinator for water mitigation. I see every day, I come across customers who have been devastated because of situations that have happened in their home as a result of flooding, due to tree roots from excavation, things as simple as hot water heaters, backflow valves, sewage overflow. So I'm fighting for the customer to get their claim paid. So I'm kind of coming from a different angle on this. One thing I've noticed in the insurance world, insurance doesn't care one bit about any of y'all. All they care about is paying the least amount for that claim. And my concern with all of this is safety. So if we have a situation where you talk about soil and grade, support for your grinder pumps, support for your sewage systems, all I'm asking is that you, with a fine-tooth comb, make sure all that's in place. Because I hear devastating things from my customers every day. Are our biggest investment. Yes, some of us are financially solvent. Some of us, our homes are our financial castle. And that's why this is so, it's emotional and it's so important to us. And we want to be sure that be assured that we're covered. And so all we're asking of you as the Planning Commission crossed, and that all of that the science supports what we're going to do here. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you.
Can you state your road again for me?
3812 Goldie Lane.
Is it Kathy? And I cannot make out your last name, ma'am.
Hi again. I'm Kathy Adesi. I live at 4802 Carrie Ann Lane.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Addessi, 2 D's and 2 S's.
Okay, thank
I
you.
have to tell you, I spoke a couple months ago. I was so nervous, but you were all so nice. So hopefully I won't get too emotional. But I have to just ask a question. I don't understand why we're having a meeting on a conditional use for moving all this dirt when we don't really know what the dirt's being moved for. There's a proposal on the table for 61 units, townhomes, adding this incredible amount of housing. We now have 54 units. We were in the Summerhill development when we purchased, we knew there were going to be 94 units total. It was totally disclosed. I wrote a letter today. I did attach a copy of the beautiful diagram that we were all given about how this was going to be developed. So I think we were all prepared for 94 units within our area. And now we're talking about, 94 altogether. 54 have been built. 4 of the 4-unit flats, which are apartments with an elevator, they decided they didn't sell that well, although the flat unit is beautiful. But the rest are all 2-unit side-by-side villas or townhomes. So there are really only 30 units left to build on the original Summerhill development. And this phase 2 is still called Summerhill. So they're still going to be using our access road coming in, the one and only off of Logan's Ferry. People drive really fast. I saw a message today on the Murraysville community page that somebody that lives on Logan's Ferry was saying, slow down. I was trying to pull out of my driveway and you almost hit me. So, you know, to have a proposal even being talked about for 61 3-story townhomes, best. I mean, we want the developer to be successful. We want them to build something reasonable. They do have a fiduciary relationship with us. They built our homes. We were promised something, and it's been totally abandoned. When they took the easement in 2013, I just found a letter I wrote in 2012. I was like, what the heck is going on? How could you just take this without our permission, without us agreeing to it, and put us in a position where if they actually build more units, we have to help them pay for the retention pond expansion. We already complied with it. We were approved by the DEP, I guess, back in 2006 or 7 for our homes. And now if they build more, they decide to build more and we have to share in the cost of that? That's what's on the easement. How can that be possible? Well, anyways, I just want to say that I believe that there could be a beautiful addition to the Summerhill community. I love the original plans. As a matter of fact, I submitted them to you, and I actually showed you even the garden apartments that they were proposing. On our Summerhill original 94-unit plans, there are 30 units left to be built, and of those, there were 2 garden apartments of 10 units each. How wonderful would it be for our community in Murraysville to have 20 apartments available to be purchased, and the original proposal was for 1,600 square feet each. I mean, there are a lot of us who are aging and would love to stay in Murraysville, and we don't have the housing. So to have an elevator building would be amazing. The other 10 units were going to be 3-story townhomes, which I'm sure would fit in very nicely. I don't understand why we're talking about moving dirt and 41 grinder pumps. And by the way, this moving of the dirt cannot be taken lightly. There's already movement happening in our community, and we really need to be very careful of what we have, especially as you go down Goldie Lane on the right-hand side. We really can't afford to have anything else done there. So what I really want to say is the developer does owe us some sort of consideration. They sold us all the homes. They gave us a promise and a dream. And now they're just totally abandoning it to monetize. And now they're taking the green space and they're going to be building many more units than really our one road can handle. We have one private road. And by the way, that road, it would be amazing if it could be built as a public road. You know, the school buses turn around there. We let them do it. I mean, we're part of Franklin Regional. You know, they come every day. So we need this private road, at least the main road coming in and going down to whatever they build, to be built in a way, because it's still on the drawing board, that it could be made in a way that it could be given back to Murraysville when whatever construction is done is completed. If we had a public road coming in, so much of this would be, it would be so helpful for us. We can't, you know, our finances are so tight as an HOA because we have to spend so much money maintaining this private road. So I just want to say, I really trust this Planning Commission. You know, I know that you're going to do the right things for us. We're giving you a lot of good information, and please, let's focus on what really could be built there and what's best for the entire community and hopefully for the developers. But talking about 61 three-story townhomes and moving dirt and grinder pumps on a little one-way in and out private road, it just doesn't make sense. So maybe we could go back to the drawing board and go back to what you originally approved in 2006. It was a pretty nice plan back then. I would love to see it completed. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Kathy. That's all the people that have signed up. Does anyone else have anything that they wish to add as far as public comment goes? Yes, ma'am. Give us your name and address, please.
Apologies for not signing up. My name's Kaya, that's K-A-I-A, Sipple, S-I-P-P-L-E, 4738 Shirley Lane. I just wanted to add that we already are seeing the effects of erosion with some of the homes along Shirley Lane. We had a deck repair this summer. If I'm not mistaken, one of the other units has cracks in the foundation. So obviously, excavation is a concern, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay, we will close the public hearing on this issue this evening.
I wouldn't close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman. We've not got our responses.
Your advice is to keep the public hearing open?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Keep it open then. I just want to say that there has been a lot of information provided to the Planning Commission, and hopefully the administration has it all. It's going to be an arduous task to distill all this information down into some points for the Planning Commission to consider in their recommendation to council.
For the conditional use or the land development?
Well, I would say that those comments encompass the whole project.
Well, you can close the meeting tonight if you want, but are you prepared to make a recommendation?
No.
Okay, then I would leave the public hearing open.
All right, we will leave the public hearing open then. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Move second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's all for the Summerhill public hearing
Bob.
tonight.
Explain to the audience what just happened.
Yeah, I intend to. I intend to.
Yeah, okay.
What happens with these kinds of issues, and as you know, there are at least two other applications that I'm aware of, is the actual site development plan and possibly a subdivision plan. And that has that been submitted? No, it has not been submitted yet. So the only thing we're dealing with right now officially, we have an application for it, is the conditional use, the earth moving. which may seem backwards to some of you, judging from some of the comments that I've heard, but that's the procedure. Planning Commission will take all this under advisement and try to make a recommendation to council on this and the other applications for a complete package. Do we have a time waiver on this, Mr. Morris?
We don't require on the conditional use as long as you keep the public hearing open. If you close the public hearing, then you may have to make a recommendation within 60 days. And that's why I would suggest that.
I
keep the
understand
public
what you're
open. Now, there has been a land development application received and comments provided. The Planning Commission has not made a recommendation as to accept that land development application yet because of the open items on the application. That was introduced to Planning Commission several months ago.
I stand corrected.
So there is a conditional use application for the land development, or for the excavation in steep slopes and poor soils, which we require to have a public hearing. And the public hearing can remain open if there are still questions to be resolved, which there are. If you close the public hearing, then the clock starts, and I believe it's 60 days that a decision has to be made. I don't know that we'll be prepared to make that within that time period. That's why the recommendation to keep the hearing open. The land development application will have a clock start on it as soon as we accept the application, and I suspect the applicant is proceeding. Now, he may choose to follow through on the conditional use before pursuing the land development, which he can do. But typically, we run the conditional use and land development simultaneously.
Yes, so let me further explain to the audience. The Planning Commission is a recommending body. So we will try to distill all of what we heard on this issue, and there will be other things that come up with the other applications. That is a recommendation we will make to council. Council will then hold their own series of meetings and public hearings on this issue as well. They have the final say. So that I would just advise you all to watch the paper and look on the website to find out for any future meetings, and feel free to come down to the municipality and look and talk to Mr. Morrison and the staff about any of these issues and concerns that you may have. So I know some of you're all welcome to stick around and hear more of our exciting things that we're doing tonight. But that's all it is for this subject. Give everybody an opportunity to leave.
Pardon? I'm sorry? Yeah. Just give me a call Thursday.
Well, Ryan handed us
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
this. These are all the declarations, I believe. Yeah, most of it's boilerplate. So, but I've been, after the Morrison and the solicitor, to sit down and go through this stuff and weed through all these legal issues. I'm like, yeah, that's what needs to happen. Yeah.
Hi, Mike.
That's why I gave you guys that declaration. The declarant
Have Golden.
in 6
No, it's
point,
Goldie, G-O-L-D-I.
declarant gave himself that easement.
We're going to need a transcript of this.
So as soon as that was recorded, before any of the units were sold, he had the rights to use that road. And it says to get to any additional.
Yeah, I can send them to you if you like.
I don't know any of
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so can we continue on
How do
with
you
the
afford to read all
meeting?
the public comments that we got?
I mean, I do pretty good, let me tell you, but this is,
The next item on the agenda is,
I wanted to get his.
what's my agenda?
Was it Katie?
Here it is, Tobin subdivision.
Mr. President, can we note the record that I'm going to recuse myself from this application as I am representing the applicant for this?
Oh, wait a minute.
So noted.
Was this on the other one?
Yes.
New one.
New one. This is,
New one.
we're doing the Tobin subdivision.
Okay, I'm sorry, then Mr. Kearns, can you say that again?
Yeah, I just want the record to reflect that I'm recusing myself from this application, as I'm going to be representing the applicant as their consultant for the project.
Okay. So this is a public hearing for the Tobin subdivision. This is a application number CU 224, conditional use for excavation in steep slopes, poor soils. It's approximately 11 acres, and this is at 5351 Klein Hollow Road, parcels number 49-15-00-0-245, and this is in the R2 zoning district. So, Mr. Kerr, you're representing the applicant. Could you give us a brief description of the project?
Yeah, Jim, you want to pull up the conditional use plan?
Could you please bring up my screen?
That's good to start out with.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
This is the project. It's located along Klein Hollow Road. It is directly, the Fernhurst Drive is there on the north of this drawing, actually the northwest. That's mine. It's not bright enough.
Yeah, it works.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, Fernhurst Drive is right here. You know, just to orient yourself with this. Fair Oaks, the Fair Oaks plan is right here. This is one of the streets. It's over there. There's a cul-de-sac there. There's an existing easement that comes through here for utilities through to that plant. What you're looking at here is just a steep slope map. So much like the same thing we just heard. The yellow areas are areas 25 to 40% slope, and these pink or red areas are areas that are 40% or greater. They don't technically meet the definition of steep slope due to the length, and at least the areas we're disturbing along the street here and in this area, because of the slope length less than 100 feet and or the height being less than 20. If you want to go to the next page, that should be the last thing I'll ask you to do, Jim.
Okay.
Actually, let's go to the grading plan. There we go. So here you can see the grading plan. What we're proposing for this lot is to have private drive come up and access this and put 3 lots back here. There'll be a remainder of the property along Klein Hollow Road that's not planned for development at this time. The difficulty with this site is there's an existing gas line that comes through here with a 60-foot easement. I believe it's a 24-inch line, high pressure. So that's why we're looking at only crossing this thing one time and then splitting the driveways off at that location. So the plan would be to construct the driveway, stormwater management down here next to the street, and then each home would have their own little stormwater management structures that would be treating the individual homes. We did receive the review back from the consultants in Murraysville, and this one, it was pretty minimal stuff. I'll just go through them. I think the briefing that you guys have in there is highlighted. The yellow comments are highlighted. The zoning chart was missing a couple pieces of information, which we can plan to note on there. It was just some things like the minimum lot coverages, impervious surface areas, and things like that. That's not an issue. It just can be added to the chart.
It was just some things like the minimum lot.
Yes, minimum lot frontage, maximum lot coverages, and impervious surface coverages. I'll slow down. I'm used to this stuff. The next comment, there was a note on the plan that the property is not located within a FEMA mapped flood zone. The comment was to just state the actual flood zone panel number on the plan, which we can do very easily, obviously. And as well, there was a comment to summarize the actual areas of these steep slopes in acreages, which we will plan to do when we resubmit. The majority of the comments here were dealing with the geotechnical report and the study that was done in relation to having the steep slopes. As you know, like we just heard, much of this area has the red bed clay soils. We did find some of those on this property. The geotechnical report outlined specific requirements, conservative construction requirements, really, that would enable this construction. Unlike the plan that you just heard, this is relatively minor. I mean, this grading that's coming up through here is going to be very minor. There is one small section of fill, so I think that's important to note. When you're dealing with red bed clays, the main concern is filling on top of them and then being able to support anything. This area through here is all cut. There's just one small area of fill. So this will all be cut excavation in here. It's also important to note that where that driveway is going to go is an existing road bed that I presume was put there during the pipeline construction or for the gas company to access the pipeline. There's been no problems with it with sliding or anything like that. But we have to, it's about 10 feet wide right now. We have to widen it out to 15 feet for kind of the standards we've set as part of this board to gain access there. So going through some of the geotechnical issues, they just wanted a little bit more information and a little bit more, and a couple studies done, a slope analysis study. I don't think any of those things are earth-shattering. We did have a conversation with the geotechnical engineer today to review those. It may require some additional testing and potential soil borings on site to address those and to produce those studies. But we fully plan to work with them and bring it up to their satisfaction, just so everyone can get comfortable with this road basically being stable. I think the other thing important to note, this area that I mentioned of fill, that was an area that was as we dug these test pits, those were actually better soils up there. It had some weathered rock in there that can probably support this. And there are none of those issues present. We also did test pits for these stormwater management areas, and surprisingly, the soil in those areas worked out pretty well. So it was a totally different soil profile through this area. There was a concern about a lot of the soils in the soil survey being noted as prone to landslides, which we have. But that's why we're doing the additional geotech studies and soil studies. Let me see if there's any other thing. I think that pretty much covers it. But like I said, the report has conservative standards in there for construction, and that's where this becomes important, that those are followed during construction. And as a result of the additional testing, geotechnical engineers assured us that those recommendations aren't going to change even if there's a worst case scenario soil found. They took a very conservative approach.
I would note that the municipality is
in that area they said that was questionable, where they make that bend into the driveway. What do you physically do there?
The recommendation in the geotech report was to over-excavate that material down as far as you need to. In some instances, maybe as far as 10 feet down to that weathered rock layer and replace it with an engineered fill. Yep. Yeah, so like I said, no matter what the additional studies find or slope studies find, the recommendations are going to still remain that. They took a very conservative approach for it. I think in both of these firms that are involved, the reviewer and the consultant on this project, were both involved in this situation across the street and are familiar with that, with the landslide that happened over at Barrington, which was all constructed and fixed and brought back up to standards.
I'll note that there's not been a land development application received yet for this project, and we have not got the comments back. Then we're waiting on those for the briefing. What's the slope of the road coming in there?
15%.
15.
Yeah, that profile is on probably the next sheet.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the setbacks there, front building line and front lot?
Yeah, so do you recall off the top of your head, Jim, what those setbacks are for this zoning district?
No, I do not. Right. I think it's 50 feet, but don't hold me to it.
Yeah, 40 or 50 feet, somewhere around there. But so these setbacks coming in here, while the property frontage is assumed to be this private roadway, right-of-way that's coming through there. So we already essentially have a 60-foot easement there that's non-buildable that would eat up those building setbacks. So we are proposing that this would be a private, just an access easement, just due to this configuration here and the issue with that existing gas easement and getting across there. They're very, very stringent on their requirements when you start messing around a gas line. It has a lot, probably 1,000 to 1,100 PSI pressure through them. So we only want to deal with that one time.
The right way, too.
How deep's the gas line?
Probably 36 to 48 inches. There'll be test pits done when they do that, of course, just to verify if they need to, because they're going to need to cross that with utilities, and there's strict requirements on separation depths and things like that. But those guys don't let you get near those requirements without them being on site while you're excavating.
Okay.
So with that high-pressure line, I guess, having witnessed what happened out on 819 or whatever it is, how often are those lines inspected, and how's that all handled with residents so close to that line?
It's not an uncommon thing. I know there was a plan that was just constructed recently that it's in New Stanton Borough, Broadview Road. There were actually 3 high-pressure lines going through this property that actually stretched the whole way to Texas. They were Texas Eastern lines. There were 2 24-inch and 1 30-inch there. And as long as you're outside of those easements, that's why they take such a big easement. They don't take just a 20-foot easement like you would for a normal utility. They take 60 feet. So in that case, it was 100 because there were 3 of them. So they spaced those out. So in this case, they've taken their buffer that they need. And that's why they have strict requirements for there's no grading around it. You got to cross it at a 90-degree angle, things of that nature.
Chris, do you have any idea of how much cut you have there?
About 2,500 cubic yards.
Where are you going to put it?
It'll be moved back probably to these areas behind the lots.
Okay.
Staying out of those steep slope, just avoiding those steep slope areas that are marked out.
Okay, so is the game plan here to get the conditional use approval before you?
Or at least get to a comfort level with the geotech engineer. That was the plan. We knew there were poor soils on site, given what goes on, what has went on in this area. So we wanted to cross that hurdle first. But I mean, as you can see here, these plans are pretty much, the only thing remaining to do on this is finalize the stormwater management and do the erosion sediment control. I think we'd be ready to make that application.
Okay. All right, since this is a public hearing, does anyone in the public have any comments or want to provide any testimony on this project? Nope. Planning Commission have any further questions?
No.
Mr. Morrison, do you recommend keeping this public hearing open as well?
I would say until we receive the response from the geotech engineer.
Okay. I have a motion to keep
I
it
make a motion to keep it open.
seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That concludes the public hearing portion of the meeting tonight. So we now have a recommendation of the parking study for this SP 324 Borland Farm Road, where the owner wishes to expand his facility to include some pickleball courts.
Currently, there's a gym membership use at the site, which is classified under the zoning ordinance as a membership club. They're proposing indoor recreation with the basketball court and pickleball courts. The parking requirements for indoor recreation, as we all know, are quite stringent. The zoning ordinance provides the opportunity for the applicant to do a parking study, which they have done and submitted. It's been reviewed, and he's here to present that this evening.
just want to make a few brief comments. I want to speak on behalf of my client. I'm the realtor. My client is-
Ma'am,
Name, rank, serial number.
Pardon me?
what's could you give us your name, please?
Sure, Michelle Nagoda.
Okay.
And my client is Laura Bartolomucci James. And Laura owns a very large portion of this road. Multiple buildings and many, many acres. Okay, so this building, it's 43,000 square feet. And it's to be an activity center. It will be multiple activities. The point about the parking is we can put parking anywhere we want. This is our engineer, and he has compiled at this point in time 140 spaces. I'm pretty sure is what we have so far.
No,
And if we can
I
add
believe it
more.
was 70.
70.
70 so far. But we have room that if we had to, we can make more because she owns everything. And there, we own across the road, up the road, and all around this building. So that's all I wanted to
Thank you.
say. So you could envision the project.
Okay, maybe, as I recall from the parking study, you were providing, your study said you had to have 40 or 50 parking spaces, and there's actually going to be 70-some.
Yeah.
77 existing.
Hello, I'm Michael Trevitz. I represent MBB Innovations, 1624 Annette Avenue in South Park, Pennsylvania. I'm representing the group that did the parking lot study and presented the data to you. Just a little bit of background. This is a performance fitness facility. Think of it as a gym, probably is the best way to describe it. And there's no alteration to the footprint of the building. It's just the interior use of the building. So what we did was, the concern was that if they expanded the indoor use of the facility, how would that impact the existing parking? And would it negatively impact it to the point where something would need to be done to come in front of you and request additional parking places? So what we did was we did a study of the current use, and that's in the report. And then we went to the property owner and we said, exactly what do you expect? And she gave us a number that said that it was 140 people. The details are there. So what we did was we did the study, we looked at the use, we divided it by the time that the facility would be open, and it came down to that the bottom line was basically would be no additional parking needed, except for the fact that we need for the commission to look at the parking lot study in lieu of what the code requires currently.
What's the parking lot made out of now?
It's a paved surface,
Okay.
asphalt more than likely.
Some is paved, and the new will be shale. So it won't create a water impact.
Yeah, the existing parking facility is paved asphalt.
Okay.
So just, I forget the numbers, but if you did the 90 spaces as required by the zoning ordinance,
Yes.
how many parking spaces would you need?
Yes, the code requires one parking space for every 90 square feet. If you do the 39,200 feet, the suggestion is from that code saying we need 435 parking places, which is onerous, to say the least.
I think
So
we
the
need to look at
alternative
that ordinance.
in the code says that if we do the parking lot study and we provide that information to the planning commission, that they can accept that as the requirement for parking.
Okay, so your study said you needed how many spaces, sir?
In the end,
I think it
we
was
said that we would
60-something.
not, we would only need 64
And there's 70.
hour.
And
We have
you're
77.
providing how many?
77 exist right now.
So,
And what that includes, excuse me for interrupting, what that includes was based on the parking lot study, and then we increased those numbers, saying, what if we were wrong? What if the number was actually bigger? So the number that we proposed to you, the 64, is actually in excess of what we actually studied. So we said, let's increase that number by 50% and still see whether or not we had enough parking available.
So 42 is what came out in
Yes.
That's right.
is needed spaces.
And then we said, let's expand that. Let's say we guessed wrong.
None of this is striped yet.
Oh, there are existing parking places on the map.
There's a diagram in the Dropbox.
Yeah, so that's all already striped like
Yes.
that?
Yes, sir. What we did was we outlined them and numbered them so you could see on the map.
Yeah. A question for you.
Sir?
Is the building now currently utilized fully? There aren't going to be other activities that are going to be moved into the future?
There's a gym in there right now.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for how the internal use is.
It's a small gym, and what's going to be included beyond, another company's going to take over the remainder of the space in the building. And they're going to have pickleball, basketball, and other activities. He's a coach.
I was trying to figure out where we're at, too.
It's a great location.
So it's basically 100% utilized?
It will be.
It will be. It will be.
There's
Okay.
Address and
there's no.
Okay, thank you.
All the other Ts.
Mr. Morrison, I don't have any problem with the parking study or the numbers that the consultant has calculated. I guess my question to you is, how do you police this so that now there's another entity that wants to move in there because they're not using all the space?
Well, we would hope that if they were going to expand their use, they would approach the municipality, and as Ms. Nagoda has stated, they have additional property there to expand the parking.
The intention is if the numbers, if the guesstimate is wrong based on projected use, they have enough property where they could come back to this planning commission and say, we want to expand that. It's not like we would be running into a problem of.
Yeah, you're not running into somebody else's property.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what Jim just said.
see
There's
that.
You mentioned
supposed to, yeah.
shale or something for proposed parking. What are we talking about there?
One of the things we considered was, before we did the parking lot study,
They're
was
supposed to.
if we had to modify
I'll change it.
parking in the area of the building, what was there? And what would it require? And would we have any issues with water and runoff and things like that?
We require
That's not
50%
part of
impervious.
this. We would come back to you with the proposed plan of where the new parking area would be if we were wrong with the guesstimate.
Okay, so all these parking spaces are already there.
Yes, sir.
They're already striped.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right,
The map that you have, we outlined them and numbered them.
yeah, made it pretty. Any other questions or concerns on this?
I have no problem with it.
Mr. Morrison, any advice for this? Should
Does this align with the other pickleball court
No.
study that we saw?
Oh,
I did not compare the two.
You didn't compare the two? Okay, I was curious.
Apparently, it's open now.
Is
in
it?
the news.
Okay.
I can tell you, in Bethel Park,
Yeah.
did put in 9 pickleball courts. No, it was 10 pickleball courts, and they put in 20 parking places just to serve that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, just driving by because of this, they weren't fully used, except maybe once when it just opened.
Yeah.
Should we, should this go on to council?
Yes,
Are you looking for a recommendation from the planning commission this evening?
if you so desire.
Do we so desire?
yes.
I think so.
You do? So the chair will entertain a motion to recommend approval of the parking.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we move on to council with a recommendation for approval, SP 324, for the proposed use of the building for basketball and pickle courts, using the parking study in lieu of the ordinance requirements for parking.
Second?
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. One more comment. I served on the South Park Township Planning Commission for about 10 years. I know how difficult your job is. I truly appreciate it.
Pay's wonderful.
He was a help. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Morrison, any other business?
Well, you'll notice that EPD didn't make it back tonight. AJ had a conflict, he had to testify. He's wondering if you guys might want to meet on July 30th, or just push it to the August meeting.
August sounds good to me.
I agree.
What's the date in August?
13th?
Let me look.
Oh, might be a bad day for you.
I should be in town.
Okay?
Yep.
Continue.
What date was that? August?
August 13th, regular Tuesday meeting.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You know, this